Welcome to episode 60 of the Hunt Backcountry podcast, presented by Exo Mountain Gear. And if you're listening to this as it's released, Merry Christmas. That time of year, I know that we are super excited to step away from things for a bit, spend some time with friends and family, but get right into it for the new year. We have some exciting things ahead with the podcast as well as Exo Mountain Gear, and can't wait to tell you guys all about it. But before we get to that, just want to say thank you for following the podcast in 2016, for the feedback and the questions. It's been an awesome journey, and we're excited to continue it. Speaking of feedback, want to give a shout out to Jared Anna, who left us a great review on iTunes. Jared, if you could send us your shipping information to podcast@exomountaingear.com, we would love to get some swag headed your way. Reviewers, if you could leave us a review on iTunes or wherever else you might be listening to this, it helps us a ton. We're just shy of 300 reviews on iTunes, which is awesome. So thank you guys who have left reviews, and if you haven't yet, we would certainly appreciate you taking the moments to do that. In this episode, we're speaking with Chase Christopher from the Mountain Project. This is a campfire discussion. It's Chase and I just kind of hanging out, talking hunting. We don't have a specific tip or tactic or strategy for elk or mule deer or any specific game with this podcast, but we cover a ton of great content. Everything from hunting aoudad in Texas to brown bears in Kodiak, Alaska, to big game in Arizona and other states, as well as just some topics like how to balance family and hunting. We get into a bit about pack goats, just kind of all over the map, but just a fun conversation. Chase and the guys at the Mountain Project are doing some very cool things. They have awesome videos, some cool gear, definitely worth checking out their stuff, which you'll hear about in this show. All right, let's get to it with Chase Christopher. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. All right, well, Chase, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Mark?
Good, man. How's Arizona life today?
Oh, it's good. We're finally getting some winter here. It's kind of been a warm, dry winter down here, and we're supposed to get some snow, maybe a white Christmas in the next couple of days.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome. I don't know what to think about with weather. I was in Vegas last week, and walking around, it was 65 in a t-shirt. And then when I flew home and got off the plane, it was in the teens. And then that night it was like -1. And then here at home, it's going to get back up to like 63 on Christmas. So it's been like, yeah, I'm surprised I'm not sick yet.
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, well, cool. Normally we do some questions at the end of the show that I'm just going to throw up front, just to kind of get the ball rolling here. Just some random off the cuff stuff. So I would love to know, with Christmas rolling around here in just a few days, I was looking at wild game recipes and something maybe to make for a Christmas get together, and it kind of got me thinking, what's one of your, obviously it doesn't have to be for the holidays, but what's like your go-to wild game recipe or your favorite thing to make, especially if you're entertaining others or maybe preparing a feast for a non-hunter or something like that?
I keep it pretty basic with a lot of like steak and potato type stuff. If I'm going to have some company over, I might break out a tenderloin and cook a whole tenderloin or something like that. A good friend of mine, Lance, he's part of the Mountain Project and brings a lot of cool recipes, and he'll cook up sandhill crane as kind of a prime rib and
nice.
Some other things. But I'm more of a simple guy and keep it with backstrap or tenderloin or kind of break out the good cuts for my company. So
yeah, that's awfully generous of you, man.
Yeah, I like to, a lot of our company, my wife's friends in particular, they're non-hunters, and I like to bring out some tasty cuts whenever they come around, so they kind of realize why we do this. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my brother-in-law, he was like somewhere at some restaurant, and I don't know that it was elk or bison or something, but he got some sort of, kind of wild. Obviously it wasn't wild because he was at a restaurant, but farm raised, quote unquote, wild game steak, and I was like, oh man, it was no good. So we had him over, and I made him just a simple good, like you said, just steak and potatoes. And now he just like, he won't stop bugging me, man. That's like all he wants. Every time we get together, he's like, hey man, you want to fire up some milk steaks?
Right. And yeah, I kind of have a go-to of my butcher makes some awesome bratwursts, and I know that's adding in like a little bit of pork fat and stuff, but
yeah,
they're really good bratwursts, elk bratwursts, and I break those out. People love those. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Cool. So also timely topic. It's kind of the time of year where a bunch of guys are looking ahead, whether that be just kind of like making plans or entering draws or what have you. I'm just kind of curious, you know, you've hunted in a lot of places and quite a few species, which I'm sure that we'll get into, but like what's one thing that you still have your eye on, maybe a bucket list hunt or something you're super excited about upcoming or just want to get the tag for?
You know, my number one, I would say, or a couple of my dream hunts, I fulfilled my dream hunt in 2014 with a nice moose in Alaska. But upcoming hunts, I would love to hunt a mountain goat or a Dall sheep. Yeah. That's kind of the ultimate mountain hunt for me. And I've actually booked a Dall sheep hunt for 2018 with a good friend of mine, Cody Vorman. So it's kind of one of those things I have to book those a couple years in advance because I have to work a lot of overtime and save for them. So, you know, but I do really enjoy the planning part of that and, you know, having something to save for. So,
yeah, that's all. Have you done any other sheep hunts?
No, I've taken a lot of sheep photos, and I've been, last year, a good friend of mine drew a desert sheep tag in Arizona, and I got to tag along on that and see him kill a really nice ram. But other than that, other than Arizona, no. I mean, if you count Texas aoudad as sheep, which I do, and they call them the poor man sheep, I've hunted those several times.
Yeah.
But you know, as the 4 known species of sheep, just my friend Lance, his desert sheep's the only hunt I've been on. So. Yeah.
Dude, that's super exciting, man. Dall's a heck of a species.
Yeah.
Amazing country.
Yeah, that's kind of my, like I said, that's my bucket list. That's my number one is a Dall sheep. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've seen that you chase those audads in Texas. I would actually love to talk about that a little bit because it's kind of one of those things. It's under a lot of guys' radar, and like you said, it's been called the poor man's sheep hunt. And you think of Texas and, you know, most guys think of, I don't know, tumbleweeds and you know, barren flatland. But really, you get into West Texas where these guys are hanging out, and there's some pretty gnarly country, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's the mountains in West Texas are rugged and a lot of roadless stuff. And, I mean, you can get off the road as far as you want to go. And especially, you know, if you want to hunt them during the rut, which is early October, it can still be in the 90s there. And you know, you have to plan for that with water and everything. So I first started hunting aoudad or like in New Mexico. It's funny because in Texas they call them aoudad, and across the state line in New Mexico they refer to them as Barbary sheep. Mm-hmm. And I started hunting them in New Mexico, and it was an over-the-counter hunt, and it was $300. Go buy the tag, you can go hunt.
Is that a non-resident? It's $300?
Yes.
In over the counter? Wow.
I want to say now it is up to like $360, but when I first started, it was right at like $280 or $300.
Wow.
That was 10 years ago, and I grew up in Texas, and that was back when I had 8-power binoculars and didn't know a thing about Western hunting. And New Mexico Barbary sheep, aoudad, were the first thing I'd really hunted in the West, and so. Needless to say, I went out there a couple or 3 years and didn't have any luck. I saw sheep, but I couldn't find a good ram, and I couldn't get close enough. But after those 3 years, I finally made it happen in New Mexico and shot a Barbary sheep for that $300, and it was, I mean, the license was $300. And just this last year, I booked a hunt in Texas. Texas is mostly private land. And so if you want to hunt aoudad, Barbary sheep in Texas, you have to pay a trespass fee or whatever the landowner may want. And that's what we did this year back in October. And it was a really cool experience. So,
was it much different hunting them in Texas versus what you had done in New Mexico previously?
The terrain is just as challenging, but I noticed in Texas there were more animals. I don't know if that's due to private land and their management practices on that private land. But, I saw a fair number of sheep in New Mexico, but finding that big ram was a challenge. And I really liked the New Mexico hunt, and I'll go back again. A friend of mine, him and his wife Drew, and they'll be heading that way in February. I'm going to try to go with them. But it's in New Mexico. It is public land, and it's big country, and it's challenge and it's fun. Texas, I'll say it's a little more easy as far as finding a mature ram, but the country is no more easy. It's rough country. So.
So that's a good, like you mentioned, your friend's heading in February. That's a good winter option, kind of a quote unquote off season for a lot of guys if they really want to plan something, maybe escape the cold weather, get out of the high country. Man, looking at that, Barbary sheep in New Mexico sounds like a great option.
It is, and most of there's an over-the-counter season over there that's year-round, but their typical aoudad season is in February, the whole month of February. And I will say, I mean, it can be a fair weather hunt. I've hunted in 60-degree temperatures a lot, but I want to say it was like 2012. A friend of mine and I went over, and it was -9 one day.
Whoa.
So, which was crazy for New Mexico. But yeah, it can be cold there too.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you mentioned growing up in Texas. Did you start hunting growing up there in Texas and doing that, or was it not till you kind of got out west that you really got into things?
I really started taking it serious out west. I grew up in a family. My mother, she wouldn't kill a fly. She'd catch a spider and take it outside. But I didn't start hunting myself until I was 15. I had a grandpa and a couple uncles that hunted. They mostly predator hunting, coyotes and bobcats. And my dad was mostly a fisherman. Him and my mom separated when I was pretty young, and he only fished. And like I said, my grandpa and uncles hunted, and I always thought it was kind of cool, but I never did it myself. I lived with my mom, and when I turned 15, I decided I wanted to hunt, and I went to my uncle's house. My dad owned a piece of property there in Texas, and we had seen a few deer on there before. And so when I was 15, and I went and borrowed my uncle's 270, and I took my two brothers, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to go hunting." So they were like, "All right, we're all in."
Just borrow a rifle and go, huh?
Yeah, my dad had bought me a 22 at a young age, and I'd shot BB guns in 22s, and I had shot plenty of guns, never really any bigger caliber. So a 270 that was a big thing for me, but I knew all about gun safety and everything else. And 15 years old, I had a learner's permit for driving, and me and my brothers went out to my dad's property, and we sat up on this hill, and sure enough, this buck, this small little 9-point, came running out chasing a doe, and I shot him, and I looked at my brothers, and I was like, "Well, what do we do now?"
Right.
And so we went down the hill, and I shot. It was a great shot. I mean, he only went 20, 30 yards, and my brothers and we drug him out to the truck, which is probably a quarter mile, and we drug him out whole and loaded him in the truck, and we took off to my uncle's house because we had no clue what to do. And so I took it, and my uncle showed me how to gut it and skin it and take the meat off of it. And I mean, it was all, I would say, uphill since then. I just fell in love with it and started hunting pigs and turkeys and deer and everything since that day.
So. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I know there's a ton of different hunting options down in Texas, really, but man, something that just sounds so fun to me is to get down there and like chase javelina with a bow. Like, it just seems like it'd be so fun.
Yeah, we had some javelina where I grew up. I grew up in North Texas, a little bitty town of Crowell, and we had some javelina, but it was mostly feral hogs. And man, those things are fun to chase with a bow.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's cool. Which I guess you guys have javelina out in Arizona as well, right?
Yeah, I have a tag coming up in February.
Awesome.
So
what took you out to Arizona? What took you out west?
After high school, my dad owned a business. I worked for him for a while, and then I worked for a little construction company, and I just had jobs, and it was a small town, 1,000 people, and I just knew I wanted to do some more. So I had a couple friends that would come out and hunt in Texas, and when I was like 22, I went out to Arizona and I hunted mule deer with my bow one January. And this friend I had, he worked for the power company, and he was in an apprenticeship, and he was telling me about it, and it sounded like a career option to me. So one day he called me up and said, "Hey, they're testing for my company, this utility company. You should come out and apply." And I was 24 years old, and that's what I did. And I started an apprenticeship, and I mean, never turned back. So that's kind of what brought me out here to Arizona. And
but hunting was a factor in part of the appeal, I guess, of getting out there.
For sure. Yeah. Coming out to Arizona and archery deer hunting, which there's a lot of options for over-the-counter tags like I did back then, and just seeing that and seeing the amount of public land and the elk and the deer, and it was just really appealing. And as a 24-year-old kid that had been hunting turkeys and hogs and whitetails, I mean, this was a whole nother world. So yeah, I just kind of took advantage of it. I applied for the job, and 2 weeks later they called me, and I was moving out to Arizona. So
that's cool. Yeah, we actually just recently had a show with Dan Adler. He has an outfitting business out there in Arizona, and so we spent some time talking, and it was amazing, to hear about really the diversity of the landscape in Arizona, how much forest there actually is. It's not all just desert, and then really just how much hunting opportunity there is. Not that, like most elk hunters, I've always thought of that Arizona elk tag, but man, talking with him and hearing more about Arizona made me like super excited, super anxious to get in the game and to get out there one day for sure.
Yeah, I still don't even know most of Arizona. I've been a lot of places in the 10 years I've lived here, but yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here, non-residents as well. So yeah, it's a cool state.
That's very cool. And obviously, I mean, you hunt all over, not just Arizona, but we'll get into some of that. But in particular, how was this fall? How was 2016 for you? Any cool hunts? Any cool stories you'd love to talk about?
Oh, 2016 was definitely my best year ever.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just like watching, your Instagram feed is like, holy cow, dude, you're piling them up. Some awesome experiences.
Right? How I stayed married, I don't know, man.
That's actually a topic I wanted to get into, is like balancing hunting and family, so we'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, so last year, I lived in Tucson. That's where when I moved to Arizona, I moved to Tucson, and lived there for almost nine years. And then I had always wanted to move up to northern Arizona, which was Tucson's all desert and a lot of coos deer and mule deer, and I've always wanted to move to the northern Arizona area. So just this past year I moved to Flagstaff, and during that transition, trying to get my family up here, everything in 2015, I didn't do much hunting at all in 2015, just trying to balance that whole move and everything else. And so I shot a pronghorn antelope in 2015. So 2016, I kind of made up for it, and it started with a coos deer in Mexico, and then my wife shot a Gould's turkey here in Arizona, and then I drew a pronghorn tag in New Mexico, shot that with my muzzleloader. Actually, go back in May, I went to Kodiak Island and shot a brown bear, which that was crazy. That was a bucket list for sure, and kind of a last minute deal. A friend of mine, Jeremy Rusink, he'd called me up and said that he had a hunt available last minute and asked if I wanted it, and I begged my wife and she let me go. And so I took off and shot a brown bear on Kodiak Island in the spring. And then went on to pronghorn. I drew an elk tag here in Arizona, archery bull tag, which took me 8 years to draw. And then after that we went off to Texas and hunted aoudad. And then shortly after that I drew another a rifle bull tag in New Mexico, shot another nice 6x6 bull there, and then I think that was it.
It's hard to remember, man. It all runs together, right?
Gosh, it's been a blur. I feel really blessed for this year. I've worked hard for it, that's for sure.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome. It sounds like we have about 7 episodes we can record on each of those hunts.
Yeah.
Right. Man, what was hunting freaking Kodiak brown bear like? I mean, it's like one of those hunts, like you said, it's a bucket list hunt. It's something that a lot of guys, even if it's something that a guy doesn't have like some sort of affinity to go do, like every hunter will still admit that there's something, special about like that experience in that animal. What was that like to get up there and do that?
Oh, it was special for sure. That I've been on several black bear hunts here in Arizona, and I've watched a lot of black bears, and I'm kind of just waiting for a really big old bear before I shoot a black bear. That's kind of what I do, is kind of wait for a mature animal, and on a lot of species. But so this Kodiak brown bear thing was something last minute. And take you back to my moose hunt in Alaska, I planned that for years. I dreamt about it, and I had saved for it, and I booked it 2 years in advance, and I had time to think about it. And then this brown bear hunt, I talked to Jeremy, and it's like in advance. So it was just kind of all these crazy thoughts going through my head. How am I going to plan for this? What am I going to do? And then it finally came down to it. And Kodiak Island is just an amazing place. It's, I'd only been to Alaska one time before for that moose hunt. So I didn't know what to expect going to the island. But flying in there, I had a couple of friends go with me. I had Jay Park, who's my partner in the mountain project, and Eric Bergman go with me, and we flew into the island, and it was just this cool little town, and getting to see everything, experience everything, then meet up with the guys and my guide and go out brown bear hunting is just kind of surreal. I didn't know what to expect, but just being there was awesome, and seeing your first bear. I mean, I've seen black bear here in Arizona, and all bears are impressive, but just to watch a brown bear go across the hillside it's crazy how big those animals are.
Yeah, I can imagine, man.
Yeah, definitely a once in a lifetime experience. Happened in a rush, and just it's so cool, man. Those animals are awesome, and it's kind of a controversial topic, because you get a lot of hate mail when you shoot something that big and fluffy. But
right. Yeah.
Just to be there and experience it, and then realize why you're there and the management practices they have and stuff. It's really interesting, and digging into all that information and figuring out why they issue the tags they do, and the population of brown bears, and just all of it. It's really neat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with having the guide, you can obviously rely on his expertise, just in terms of field judging the animals, even telling between a sow and the male, and I know that even sometimes that can be difficult in the field, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I went into it just a rookie. I didn't know anything about them, and my guy Julian, he's a local there from Kodiak, and his whole family's from there, and he's a younger guy, probably mid to late 20s, but very knowledgeable. And I learned a lot from him just about how to judge a sow versus a boar, or, a big bear versus a small bear, because they all look big to me.
Right, exactly.
So,
wow. So was that a rifle hunt?
It was. You can use any weapon, but this particular part of Kodiak, which is it's called the road system, which you can access it by vehicle, but I mean that doesn't detract from the amount of hiking you have to do. I mean, but there's some areas in the southern part of Kodiak, I'm told, that are more archer friendly, but this is, and just being there and hunting it, the challenge of archery hunting, I mean, it would be crazy, just because it's so thick that you're literally like beating and hacking your way through the salmonberry and the alders. And I mean, these bears know you're there within a couple 100 yards, much less 30 yards for a bow, Yeah. So it's kind of not saying a guy couldn't do it. I'm sure there's guys that could shoot him with the bow there, but it would be challenging for sure.
Yeah.
So
you don't see many guys doing it with a bow, that's for dang sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And walking up on that bear just after we had shot him, I mean, it's so intimidating that the size of him is so crazy that I respect anyone that does that with a bow. Having them stare down your arrow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the mountain project. We certainly want to talk about that. Just give us the rundown. I know some of our listeners are probably familiar with either your films or some of your products, things like that. But really, how did the mountain project come together? What is it? What do you guys have going on? What's the goal? All that good stuff.
So the mountain project came together whenever Jay Park and I met here in southern Arizona, and we just had a lot of different ideas and whatnot. And the mountain project was originally going to be like a documentary style film. We were going to take 5 different hunters, take them to 5 different locations, hunt 5 different animals, and just try to make this really cool documentary film. And we quickly realized that with our jobs and families and everything, that it just wasn't going to work out that way. So we get that question a lot. What is the mountain project? And sometimes we still struggle to define that, but for the most part, it's become kind of a lifestyle brand where we first wanted it to be this big documentary film. We've still stuck with filming our hunts, whether it's an antelope hunt or a deer hunt or whatever, and just kind of made it a lifestyle and just tried to keep it to our roots and do what we like to do and put out good films. So
did you guys have filming?
Turned it into.
Did you guys have filming experience before this, or just kind of learning as you go for the mountain project?
I told you about when I was 15, killed my first deer. Like shortly after that, I bought my first camera, and I've been carrying a camera ever since, and it was all kind of self-taught, and I just wanted to keep those experiences and document them, whether it's for myself or family or whoever. And Jay, he's got a little more professional background in it with marketing and whatnot, and he's really good at the editing side of things. But yeah, it's just kind of a passion we both had, and no professional background really other than his degree in marketing. But yeah, just something we love to do, and yeah, just probably spend too much money on it, but we like it. So.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. I mean, that's how I first caught wind of you guys, was seeing some of your films, and was certainly impressed by what you guys put together. It definitely looks, very professional, and you've certainly gotten recognition for it. We were just kind of talking before air. You guys kind of got commissioned or hired, I guess, to do a pretty cool project with Cam Haynes up north. That was for a moose hunt as well, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was. It was Tenzing Backpacks, they sponsor Cam Haines, and they were looking for someone to film this Alaska moose hunt. It was supposed to be a Dall sheep hunt that he was going to go on with Roy Roth, and the way the weather turned out, it just ended up being a moose hunt. But yeah, they wanted to make just a short film out of Cam hunting moose with his best friend, and we were lucky enough to be the people they hired. So we traveled up to Oregon beforehand, and we filmed a lot of stuff with Cam and hung out with him for a couple days. And then Jay actually went to Alaska with him and hunted moose. And we put that film together for Tenzing, and they used it for their marketing content, and then they allowed us to put kind of the director's cut on our social media page, which has been pretty cool too. So yeah, that was an awesome project. That was a lot of fun. So
That's
really
cool.
lucky to do that.
Was that the first time that you had met Cam? Was for that project?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I've followed his stuff for a long time and always been a fan, but yeah, it was pretty cool to get to go up and work with him.
Yeah. That's funny. Obviously one of those dudes that a lot of people love him, and obviously he catches a lot of flack as well, but every time I've talked with him in person, and that's just a super genuine cool dude.
He is.
Yeah,
very much. Yes.
Yeah,
sure is.
Awesome. So what are some of the big, because we have, obviously filming hunts is just a huge segment these days. You got guys doing it professionally, guys who want to do it professionally, guys who, like you started, are just kind of doing it to document their own adventures, things like that. What are some of the simple things that anybody, regardless of kind of where they're at in the journey or what their film goals are, what are some of the lessons you've learned, mistakes you've made, tips you can share for guys who are interested in capturing their own hunts?
What I noticed is you really have to want to do it. It's not easy. From running my first cameras on auto all the time and just stacking up the crappy B-roll that I thought was good back then, to the more expensive camera gear we have now. It's something you really have to want to do. I get a lot of questions on, hey, what camera should I buy? Hey, what lens should I use? Hey, what should I do? And I see a lot of guys, buy good things, and just kind of put them to the side because it's not easy. It's something that it takes a little time, it takes a little effort, and it's one of those things that if you're gonna teach yourself, it's gonna take time. And I would just say stick with it, and even if you do run on auto, that's not the big thing to me. Just capturing that experience is pretty cool. You don't have to be all cinematic and professional quality. It just, as long as you're there to capture it for the right reasons, I think that's when guys do well with it. Yeah. If that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. That's a good word. You can relate that to hunting in a lot of ways. You see the guy who, gets super into, let's say, bow hunting, and the next thing you know, he has the $1,200 bow and the best arrows, the best broadheads. He's, head to toe in Sitka or First Light or whoever, and they're dropping all the money on the equipment and the gear. But sometimes we put that stuff way ahead of actually making the right investment and the time and effort, instead of just investing money in, the latest and greatest whatever. That obviously applies to filming as well as hunting, I think.
Oh, for sure. And I've been guilty of that myself.
Oh, we all have, man. I'm throwing stones from a glass house.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, if you want to do it, you just got to go back to the reasons why you want to do it and just make it fun.
Yeah, for sure. That's very cool. So the other part of the Mountain Project, obviously, you guys continue to release films, and I would just encourage our listeners to go check them out. You guys have some seriously cool hunts, thinking back on, what was that, 2013, your elk hunt that you guys have? Was it 2013?
Yeah, 2013, I drew a archery tag in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And that was one of our first really decent films we released as the Mountain Project. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, super. I don't want to even spoil that, but just tell people to go check it out. Super fun hunt, super awesome animal for sure. But on top of that, you kind of mentioned it's involved into a lifestyle brand, which is kind of a buzzword that some listeners may or may not be familiar with, but kind of, a lifestyle brand, meaning coming out with products, gear, apparel, etc., that represents the lifestyle, whatever that lifestyle might be. Obviously for you guys, it's hunting in the mountains. How did that evolve? Was that just kind of a natural progression of coming up with some designs and then taking off and expanding? Because you guys have a cool collection of things to offer right now.
Yeah, that's, mostly it started with the filming of the hunts, and we spend a lot of money on camera gear and going on these hunts and everything else, and we never really made anything off of it. So we were thinking, what can we do to at least, make something, make a little bit of money out of this. And so we were thinking about an apparel line, and that's how we now have this organic t-shirt series. And if you haven't seen them, it's basically an animal it's kind of diced up into the different cuts of an animal and labeled as, jerky or loin or whatever. And we put organic under it. And so this t-shirt line's kind of been one of the first products that we offer. And, we've sold a few of them. We haven't really made much money, but
you've sold a few to me. I know that.
People take them pretty well. We think they're pretty cool. We wear them all the time. And, we did that, and we've got some other shirts, in the works. And then, a big part of our hunting is bringing that meat home and having that, organic deer, elk, whatever we shoot. And so we're trying to incorporate some cooking aspect to it, and just some different things that people might like. So.
Yeah, you guys, in that series, you guys shoot a bunch of animals: elk, deer, sheep, moose. I mean, there's probably 8 different animals that you guys have?
Yeah, I think 8. Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah.
So whatever critter you guys are listening to, they probably have the shirt for it, and they're pretty cool designs for sure. Did I see that you guys have a one design, and you kind of did it in conjunction with, or at least to benefit, BHA? Did I see that? Was that from you guys?
Yeah, we made this shirt. It's got the hashtag Keep It Public, and it's kind of got the communist fist with a shed antler in the fist, to kind of represent that, keeping it public and keeping it for the people. So, yeah, we have that shirt available on the website, and we're donating $5 from each of those shirts. Pretty much the profits we make off the shirt to BHA, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. So, yeah, pretty cool shirt. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Thank you guys for doing that. BHA is doing some great work. We've had Land on the show, and outside of that, I've got to hang out with him a bit in pretty casual situations, and just super good guy. Obviously other guys on staff that I've talked with. It's exciting to have them join up with a bunch of other great organizations that we have, obviously, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and TRCP, and there's so many good groups doing good work, but certainly BHA is spearheading some awesome stuff that benefits us all, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're a big fan of what they do, and I haven't got to meet those guys yet, but they seem like a cool bunch of guys, and we definitely want to support them in any way we can, because here in Arizona, the majority of our hunting land is public land, so we want to keep it that way.
Yeah, for sure. So I was on your YouTube channel checking out some of the hunts and stuff before the show, and then stumbled upon a couple videos that you had about pack goats. So is that like a new thing for you guys? Because it sounded like it was a kind of a new series or something you were getting into. I'd love to get into that, because this past fall I actually hunted with pack goats for the first time. My elk hunting partner last year got some pack goats, and so he's both raising some pack goats, but then he also had acquired some like 3-4-year-olds that we actually took with us on this trip. So I was super interested when I saw that you were kind of getting into that hunting approach as well. How's that been?
It's good, man. It's kind of a slow process for me. I personally never got to hunt with pack goats.
Okay, so you're just raising them for the hunting.
Yeah. No one I know does it down here. I'm super interested in it, but my mother-in-law actually raises goats. Oberhasli is more of a dairy goat, but I've started reading into it, and from what I've read, they make decent pack goats. They're not the biggest breed, but they've got strong legs. So, I kind of dove all in this spring. I got a few goats from her. I've got 4 of them, and I need to get a couple more videos out. We've been filming a little bit about them, but when you start from little bitty kids, it's kind of a slow process.
Yeah.
You have to raise them, and they say it's 2 years before you can really pack on them. So I kind of did this series as to teach myself. I'm doing a lot of research on it, and if anyone else is interested, to maybe help them out a little bit. But honestly, I don't know much about it. I'm learning as I go, and it's pretty fun. So that's kind of why I put it on YouTube, to just show my experience with it.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, man. So, just learn as you go.
Yeah,
I think we're going to end up doing a show on it because, like I said, my hunting partner, and we did it for the first time this year, and there's a couple other guys that I've talked to are super into it, and it's funny, man. Like there's more that goes into it, I think, up front than you would think, because you have to think about, like gear for the goats and stuff like that. But honestly, in the end, once you do that research, it was like hunting with them this year was way more low maintenance than I thought it was going to be, and actually just flat out a ton of fun. It was just fun having them on the hunt. It really was. That's good to hear, because there's not a lot of areas in Arizona that I could utilize them. Arizona's full of road systems, so I do apply for Colorado and other areas that are more roadless, more wilderness stuff, and that's kind of my plans, to use them in a couple years when I go to those places. But it's cool. I get to read and see a lot about them, and it's good to hear that they're not high maintenance when they're out in the field. So I mean, my goats will be the same. Yeah, they certainly have some little stubborn aspects to their personality, but overall it went really smooth. That's where we used them, was Colorado, and used them to pack in, and then obviously was fortunately enough to use them to pack out a bowl, which was cool. And just hunting with them, like when we would just take them with us all the time. Like and they want to be with you, especially like when you're raising them from kids, they're just gonna want to be right with you, because it's like you're part of the herd, and so. Right. We wouldn't have them chained or trained to each other. We wouldn't, have them on leads or anything else. I mean, we just hiked the mountains up and down and over everything in Colorado for a week, and they were right there with us while we were hunting. Anytime we would like stop and call, they would just kind of stop and take a break. Most of the time, just sit down and chill. And then we noticed a couple days in, like they were super helpful from like a hunting strategy perspective, because it doesn't look like they're paying attention, but they have sort of that animal sense, where there was multiple times where they were spotting game before we were. And so it was cool. It was funny. We were doing some elk calling sequences, and you always kind of wonder if you have a bull coming in silent or something. I started paying as much attention to them and how they were reacting as I would be scanning through the timber to look for anything that could be approaching. That's cool. Yeah. I'd wondered that. I'd kind of wondered, what did they do when they saw an elk? I'm sorry, when the elk saw them, like, were the elk bothered by them, or? Yeah, I mean, did you notice any different? We didn't have an encounter where I can say for sure that the elk spotted them. That said, I shot my bull at 12 yards, and he was headed to, my buddy like dropped back calling, and the goats were between me and him.
Okay.
And so he certainly could have seen them. I can't say for sure. I was so focused on him, but he certainly didn't react. And the way that they, I think it's one of those things where if anything else, it would almost buy you a shot opportunity as much as it would like wreck one quickly. Because what I think
take
is,
the focus off of you.
Yeah, it would take the focus off of you. And even if an elk like saw him and was somewhat curious, I don't think that they would be in total spook mode. I think they would be more curious, like stop and hold up and maybe check it out, but not just dart off because they saw a goat,
Right.
Yeah, it was cool, man. They were good to hunt with. They'll go anywhere. They'll go all day. Sometimes you got to kick them in the butt because they want to eat all the time. So as you're hiking through the woods, they're kind of just nibbling at anything and everything. But yeah, well, I mean, we're definitely planning on doing it again. And we had 3 this year, and we're actually planning on bringing probably at least 1 more. So, but
cool.
And then for the pack out, we had them each carrying about like 35, 40 pounds. So multiply that by 3, and it certainly helped us. That's for dang sure.
Oh, yeah. I would think you could take even a couple more things into the field with you.
Yeah. In fact, we did. Yeah. It was kind of nice. We had little, I forget what they're called. Like, I think Helinox chairs, some sort of super, like, kind of lightweight camp chair, which normally we don't have anything like that because we're backpacking in, 5-6 miles. So we're pretty minimal. But we thought, what the heck? We have the goats. And so, like, we had a couple little non-essential niceties in camp because we had them, which was nice.
Cool. Yeah, I drew archery bull tag in Colorado back in 2009, and I can draw that tag again this year, but I'm kind of waiting. I think I'm going to wait 1 more year until I can take my goats with me. I'm kind of excited about that.
Yeah.
Because it's out 6 miles where we pack into in Colorado there.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, dude, it's I was excited to see that, and I'm excited to watch along on the channel and see how it goes for you, because it was fun for sure and helpful, and we're definitely doing it again.
Well, cool. That makes me want to get a couple more videos out on the progress of them.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So one question we always just love to hear, from anybody and everybody, and somebody with your experience who's hunted in a lot of different places, a lot of different species and things like that, is how are you continuing to learn or grow, or maybe what's some lessons that, like, after 2016, you had such a great year in so many places, but like, what's something that sticks with you is like, I could have done this better, or I still need to work on this?
A lot of lessons I learned this year were during archery elk season, because here in Arizona, elk hunts are so few and far in between. So, I mean, it's my last Arizona elk tag was in 2008, shortly after I moved here. And so I've been on several elk hunts with friends, but it's always different when you're the guy with the tag and with the bow in your hand. So, this year's like getting to hunt elk with a bow again was really cool. And I got to have a little in-between tag with New Mexico and Colorado, but, that's probably where most of my lessons came from, is just calling and, knowing when to move, when not to move, and all those things. There's a lot of states where you could hunt elk every year, and it might be a little faster learning process that way, but here, even though it took me 8 years to draw a second tag, it was definitely a lot to learn. So, yeah. But just, it doesn't matter. I mean, being in the field whenever I'm always learning stuff. I'm constantly learning, coming into hunting at a later age, and pretty much teaching myself. It was kind of, I don't know, it's different than if you have maybe your dad or somebody, hey, do this, showing you along the way. So, man, every time I'm in the field, I learn something, and I try to learn something every time I'm in the field. So,
yeah, for sure. I'm the same way, man. Same way for sure. What is it about calling like that worked or didn't work for you this year, calling elk?
So the tag that I have, it's the same tag, the exact same unit I had back in 2008, and there was 50 less tags back then. And in Arizona, when the tags are few and far between, you have all your buddies that go. I think there's 125 tags when I had it in 2008, and this year there's 175. And you definitely notice those extra people in the field. So it seems like the elk can, I don't know, you can tell it. Sometimes you can tell the difference between an elk and a hunter. And it seems like I heard a lot more people bugles this year than I did in my previous hunt. And I think the elk can gather that as well. So I learned this year to just be more silent and listen to the elk. And whereas I think in 2008 I was blowing a bugle tube around every corner, and just I didn't know. That was my first ever elk tag. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And this year I just kind of, the rut is I mean, it can be on again, off again. It can be hot one day and it can be 3 days of just nothing. So I take advantage of those days that are really going, and I just move in on bulls that are bugling, and I just let them do their thing and be silent. So maybe it should be called the lack of calling, but that's just, I mean, I think I probably called a fraction of what I called in 2008. So just some light cow calls and maybe a locating bugle, just to make them sound off whenever they take a break, and just cover that distance. It's when they're vocal, and it's easiest just to move in on them when they're doing their thing. So
yeah,
I learned a lot about that this year.
Yeah, that really echoes. And I don't, there's obviously, I think that's a pretty good lesson to learn and a pretty good piece of general elk hunting advice. Kind of no matter where you're hunting elk, but if they're fired up, they're talking. I mean, there's in most instances no reason for you to start talking back at them unless maybe you've covered the ground, closed the distance, and are in a tight position where you pose a threat. But if you're just talking to talk from several hundred yards away, it's probably not beneficial. But everything you just said really echoes. I mentioned we had that previous episode talking about Arizona elk hunting with Dan Adler, and that's really echoing what he said. And he said that's been incredibly effective for him, in particular in Arizona, even more so than it has been in other locations. So that definitely makes sense. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, if they're talking, let them talk. So
yeah. Awesome. So one thing that we touched on, and I meant to get back to earlier when we were talking about your 2016 season, which we mentioned, was just balancing, family and hunting and all that, and how does that work out? Because that's something that, I'm in the middle of. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and Steve just had a baby. And so we've had those discussions of like, oh man, this changes things, doesn't it? Like, hunting season looks different when you have the kid in the picture. And so you got a couple kids and obviously busy with a full-time job. And so just kind of, how does that work out for you? I mean, is that literally just a matter of kind of juggling everything as best as you can, or is there some sort of strategy to find out what's worked well, what hasn't?
I think in 2016, I definitely pushed my limits.
You're finding out where that boundary is?
Yeah, for sure. I have a 5-year-old daughter and twins that recently turned 4 years old. So
that is a handful, my friend.
Yeah, 3 young kids, and that's mostly why 2015 and even 2014, we're slower slower seasons for me. There's definitely a lot of family time there and raising those young kids. So it came to 2016, and I drew a couple more tags. The bear hunt was obviously a booked hunt, and an aoudad hunt on private land. I booked that one, but I didn't expect to draw a couple of the tags I did in New Mexico, so it kind of stacked up a full season. And it's, for me, family comes first, and then work, of course, funds it all, and then hunting is just a hobby. So I have to make sure that family and work are taken care of before I can go hunting. So it took a lot of time, spent doing that to assure that I could get away. And a couple of those hunts were just, weekend hunts. They were just haul butt and hunt 2 days and come home, and that's, some of the bigger hunts cost a little more money, and I have to work more overtime. I price hunts on how much overtime I have to work, and
how many hours does this cost?
Yeah, exactly. And my wife, she's a stay-at-home mom, so she's awesome with our kids, and she's very understanding of what I do, and I work a lot of hours, and I come home every night and we cook dinner and do bedtime and do all those things so I can, have the chance to take 5 days here or 3 days here and go hunting. So yeah. I really have to capitalize on those short periods of time I have to go hunting. So yeah, it's definitely a balance. It's figuring out, the money I need to make sure they're not doing without, and the time I need to spend to make sure dad's around and they're not doing without attention. And, so it may appear on social media. I post some photos of my kids and stuff, but it may appear on social media that I do nothing but hunting, but that's definitely not the case.
Yeah.
I spend the majority of my time with the family and at work, and hunting is just when I can throw it in there. So
yeah. No, that's cool to hear, man. I like what you said too about being home, for those things, for dinner and for bedtime and all that. It's one thing I think that I've noticed, and that is helpful just in balancing, everything we talked about, work and family and hunting and activities and things like that. It's like, when you are home, when you do have that time, be home and actually spend that time with them. I think it's unfortunate but true, but there's a lot of guys who maybe they don't hunt, maybe they don't take these trips like we do into the backcountry, and maybe they're technically home more, but when they're home, they're not home. Like, they're not engaged, they're, vegging out or what have you. And it's, I'm the same way. Like, when you're home, be home. When you're with the kids, be with the kids. I think when you invest in that, you can, sneak away into the backcountry for a week, and it's not, not the end of the world.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a challenge, how it is. Being dad is not easy. And I work as a lineman, and it's public service. So when people are out of power, there's sometimes and stuff, but I try to get off on time whenever I can, and I'll literally sit out in my car for 5 minutes and say, all right, it's time to go in there and, be active. And even though I'm really tired, it's time to go in and spend time with the kids and be a dad. And then as soon as they go to bed and crash, a lot of times I do the same. So,
yeah. Dude, I hear you, man. That's what I usually, that same whole mindset. I come home and it's like, I consider it the second shift. Like, yeah, work's over, but it's on to the second shift, and you got to put in that quote unquote work there, which is, I hate to use that term because it makes it sound like it's a job, which it's not, but it is work because it takes effort and it's work.
Yeah, it does. It takes a lot of effort. It sure does. So
that's awesome. Well, we appreciate it, Chris, or Chase. What would you have for our listeners? Like, where can they find you? Where can they follow you on social media? Follow the Mountain Project? What would you like for them to go check out?
Most of what we're doing now is most of our films and everything are on YouTube. The Mountain Project, you can just search The Mountain Project on YouTube, and then on Instagram and Facebook as well. And then, I talk to a lot of people on my personal social media accounts, just Chase Christopher. Any of those, I'd love to. If I have time, I'd like to answer any questions, and I like to be involved. I have a busy schedule, but I certainly like to, if anyone has a question about the Mountain Project or what we do, I really like to talk about it. So
awesome. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to talk about it with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here, Mark. Appreciate it.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode, guys. Once again, thank you for listening. We appreciate your feedback, whether you leave us that review in iTunes or want to email us with any other comments or suggestions or questions to podcast@exomountaingear.com. We would love to hear from you. It's going to be exciting 2017. Can't wait to tell you guys all about some new things coming. But until then, enjoy this time with family and friends. And if we don't hear from you before then, we will see you in the new year.